Child, don't worry. Everything will be resolved in the end. I'll handle things at the securities department. You call Mr. Nagato and consult him. This might also be part of Liang's Feng Shui layout. After connecting with Rentaro, the answer was simple and clear. The financial source of Drake Church lay to the left, the direction from which the main river flowed upstream. 2 days ago, Liang had preserved the iron bridge to slow down the inflow of wealth energy into the cathedral. Today, he lured the police to block the left side road, cutting off even the last trickle of wealth flowing in from Riverside Avenue. His goal was to sever every possible channel through which the Apostle Society could raise funds. Tommy felt as if he'd been sucked into a whirlpool lined with razor blades. Not only could he not escape the crisis, but the deeper he sank, the more he bled. No matter whether he moved or stayed still. Clinging to his last hope, he asked Rentaro, "Mr. Nagato, can this Feng Shui formation be broken?" Rentaro's tone matched his own helplessness. The police won't leave easily once they're here. And since this is being treated as a terrorist attack, they'll actually reinforce their presence to secure the area. If no pedestrians or vehicles pass through, the space in front of the cathedral will become stagnant water. Aside from the shachi rushing in from the iron bridge, we'll gain nothing. Our plan, so close to success, will collapse at the final moment. Master Tommy, use every resource you have to get the police to withdraw. Withdraw the police, reopen the roads, Tommy murmured, repeating Rentaro's words. Suddenly he said, "I've got an idea." The call was placed from the conference room at Drake Church to Angel headquarters in northern Frankfurt. On the surface, it looked like a remote abandoned warehouse rarely visited by anyone, but inside each storage unit were brainwave control systems capable of global positioning. Under Tommy's arrangement, a father soon turned himself and his rebellious teenage son into the police. It turned out the boy had bought a homemade bomb from a gang and planted it in a residential building just to test its power. The father swore to the authorities it was purely a childish prank and that his son admitted due to insufficient allowance, he'd only placed one bomb with absolutely no second device involved. After listening to Tommy finalize the false confession plan, von Friedrich's expression remained serious, though his voice carried unmistakable admiration. When there's no direct solution, guiding the police to treat a major incident as minor is also a viable approach. Though it won't resolve things immediately, once the police obtain a plausible explanation and conduct thorough checks without finding further cause for suspicion, they'll likely withdraw by this afternoon. He stood up and walked toward the projection screen in the conference room, hands tucked into his pockets, gazing up at the stock price chart. The market had just opened, and the outlook was grim. Within 5 minutes of opening, Wisbank's share price had plummeted 7% from 43 euros, dangerously approaching the 40 euro mark. Von Friedrich seemed to mutter to himself, "The securities department still has enough capital to support another 10% drop. If we can hold above 35 euros today, tomorrow the cash from mortgage-backed securities will flow back into the market. Although sell orders are flooding in, there haven't been any large institutional sell-offs yet. In half an hour, once this downward momentum slows, the securities department can place buy orders to pull the price back up." Tommy stared anxiously at his computer screen and said, "According to data from the branches, the bank run has already caused a capital outflow of 30 million euros. At this rate, by tonight, it'll reach 240 million euros, and within a few days the bank will have to declare suspension of operations. Should we hold a press conference and issue a public denial? No. Acting too hastily now would only signal desperation and confirm suspicions about our liquidity. We must endure at all costs until the end of today. Only then can we reclaim market confidence by presenting ourselves as victors. Tonight's news broadcasts and tomorrow's morning paper will stabilize the situation for us." Tommy turned to look out the window toward Riverside Avenue. The police near the Iron Bridge were still guarding the intersection and questioning passers-by, showing no sign of retreating. After a moment's thought, he picked up the phone again and dialed Angel Base, and Liang must be near Wisbank's headquarters. Find him immediately, and by any means necessary, bring him to Zone D. In the Apostle Society's coded language, Zone D meant death. Tommy's call had just issued a covert assassination order at the intersection of Caesar Avenue, and Liang lounged deep in a cafe chair by the roadside, resembling an immobile, overweight black man soaking up the sun alongside tourists. From behind his sunglasses, he glanced sideways at the entrance of Wisbank. The crowd lining up to withdraw money was beyond counting, but under the staff's coordination, they remained orderly and quiet. Data sent by Daniel showed that Wisbank operated 50 branches worldwide, 30 of them in Germany alone, and right now every single branch had long withdrawal lines, with an average of 10,000 euros withdrawn per second. Liang kept shaking his dark head, muttering, "It's over, 10,000 euros a second. Just the people queuing today could finish off Wisbank." Xiao Yu replied, "You've miscalculated. At that rate, they wouldn't even withdraw 300 million euros in a full day." Dada told me German banking law requires a bank to suspend operations once its capital falls below 50. Given Wisbank's size, it'd take at least 3 days at this pace before shutdown. And besides, Rentaro already redirected the pedestrian flow at headquarters, which actually improves their feng shui. The withdrawal rate might even keep slowing down. I'll make it accelerate, and Liang said just as his phone rang. After speaking briefly, he turned to Xiao Yu. "They found your bomb. They're defusing it now. You didn't make it too complicated, did you? Don't go blowing up the bomb squad." Xiao Yu pushed aside the long wig covering her face, glanced carefully around. No one nearby seemed to understand Chinese, then whispered, "I kept the fuse simple. but just in case the police didn't know which wire to cut, I added red and green wires. And Liang burst out laughing. I've just realized you're actually pretty funny. Red and green wires, you've watched way too many cartoons. Now Ren Taro thinks he's neutralized the Feng Shui impact of the bank run, and your bomb has drawn in the police to tie them down. This time it's our turn to serve. As he spoke, he pulled a notebook from his coat and drew a Tianxi talisman, handing it to Xiao Yu. She took it and examined it. 2 horizontal lines connected to small circles at the top, 2 side-by-side field characters, field in the middle and at the bottom, 2 vertical square zigzags descending like an open zipper. What talisman is this? This, Liang said, is the misfortune to fortune talisman for Wisbank. Ah, so generous to Wisbank? Yeah, but this talisman was drawn backward. The downward zigzag lines twist in the wrong direction. It's become a fortune to misfortune talisman. Once activated, it'll completely invert Wisbank's Dousha Feng Shui layout. Xiao Yu turned to look at the entrance of Wisbank. The door sat at a corner, directly facing the center of a crossroads, a common layout for banks. This design, known as the Dousha Feng Shui layout, channels the chaotic, clashing energies generated by intersecting streets. While unsuitable for homes seeking peace and stability, banks can transform this aggressive sha qi into powerful wealth energy if properly managed. Standard practice includes installing narrow double-glass doors with offset entrances, forcing customers to navigate a winding path inside. For intersections with especially intense sha qi, staircases or revolving doors are added to further diffuse the energy. Xiao Yu absorbed this new knowledge eagerly and asked, "Where do we stick this talisman?" "On the main door of Wisbank." Xiao Yu's face immediately scrunched up. Hundreds of people were watching that glass door. How could he possibly paste such a strange little slip of paper there? Seeing Xiao Yu's distress, Liang smirked with obvious satisfaction. Just kidding. It's not about sticking it on the door. Even if you did, a tiny scrap like that couldn't neutralize a Feng Shui formation this big. Give this paper to the leader of Team 2. Tell him to bring over the barriers and rearrange the crowd's queue according to this diagram. That'll flip the auspicious northern energy into misfortune. Xiao Yu looked at the talisman, then at Liang, realized his own foolishness, and couldn't help but laugh. He took the talisman and walked into a cafe just dozens of meters away. A short while later, 2 men in gray suits pushed their way into Wisbank's lobby, speaking fluent German. A manager hurried out to greet them. The men flashed official credentials and explained they were municipal crowd control specialists. With so many depositors lining up, the queue would soon spill onto the train station plaza, threatening public safety. They'd already brought barriers and were ready to help reorganize the flow. The manager peered outside and saw a truck emblazoned with Frankfurt's city emblem parked right by the entrance, loaded with metal barriers. Not wanting to anger city officials, he immediately summoned several security guards to assist the gray-suited men. 2 parallel rows of barriers now flanked Wisbank's entrance. The gray-suited man explained that this setup blocked the view into the bank for those at the front of the line, effectively separating the interior from the exterior and keeping the outside queue calm. He then arranged 2 sets of barriers into a grid shape, isolating the first 20 customers from the rest of the line. "This is a buffer waiting zone," he told the manager. "It lets people behind see how quickly the front moves, maintaining the illusion that withdrawal is fast and easy, keeping everyone in good spirits." Meanwhile, 2 other gray-suited men, aided by security, configured the long single-file line into a serpentine double-row zipper. According to them, this zigzag pattern dispersed forward momentum. If anyone tried to surge ahead aggressively, each bend in the line would act as resistance, preventing any unified push forward. The manager watched in admiration. The gray-suited man gestured warmly and said, "Of course. The real benefit is capacity. The double zigzag holds more people and shortens the visible queue by 3-fold. See? Like folding a rope." The manager beamed. "You really know your stuff now. It doesn't look nearly as crowded. We're professionals. Good luck." They shook hands warmly. And Liang, seeing the bank run queue now perfectly shaped into the fortune to misfortune talisman, shifted his focus to his computer screen. Thanks to Daniel's hacking, Wisbank's real-time ledger streamed directly onto his monitor. True to his playful hacker nature, Daniel had even added a cartoonish black bomb figure at the bottom of the screen, with a lit fuse slowly crawling toward it. When the bomb exploded, Wisbank's capital would hit the legal shutdown threshold, their primary target for the day. And Liang watched the second-by-second withdrawal stats and murmured under his breath, "Rise, rise, rise." Xiao Yu leaned in curiously, squeezing next to Liang to watch the burning fuse. Its glow intensified, sparks grew larger and the burn rate accelerated. Excitedly, Xiao Yu whispered, "Look, look, withdrawals are really spiking, 16 euros per second now. Haha, it's over, it's over." And Liang grinned wickedly, turning fortune into misfortune, no saving it now. Under the effect of the human form Tianxi talisman, the speed will only increase. Look, 18 euros per second already, hehe. After a moment, Xiao Yu asked, "But isn't the Tianxi talisman part of Taoist practice? How can it be used in Feng Shui and actually break its power?" And Liang glanced at the scene outside Wisbank. Customers were now flowing in and out much faster than before. Satisfied, he leaned back in his chair and explained to Xiao Yu, "Chinese culture centers on one word. Key martial arts revolve around qi. Taoism revolves around qi. Feng Shui revolves around qi. Even calligraphy and traditional painting emphasize qi. Taoism is the root of Chinese culture. Taoists believe qi is formless, traceless, yet omnipresent. It connects all things and governs life, death, prosperity and decay. Yet Taoist theory never categorizes qi into specific types, because qi is seen as an indivisible whole, perhaps even a universal energy that links everything in existence. Do you know what that is? Xiao Yu shook his head blankly. I don't know either. An Liang admitted, but according to Matt-Face theories, this force does exist. It's a primordial cosmic microwave radiation that permeates all matter, including humans. Specific physical arrangements create distinct Feng Shui effects, but so can human formations. In fact, using living people might generate even stronger effects than static objects, because humans are dynamic. They actively engage with and amplify the qi field. Ancient Taoist talismans are essentially practical diagrams for guiding qi flow. Their power lies not in the paper, but in how the human body generates and directs qi through precise brushstrokes that alter qi's direction to produce specific outcomes. The principle is very similar to Feng Shui, so if you arrange people into the shape of a talisman, that collective energy would be far more potent than a piece of paper. Xiao Yu stared open-mouthed, utterly baffled. After a long pause, he finally said, What was all that? Told you? I don't know either. Ask Matvey when we get back. That guy's been playing with microwaves and dragon veins in Crack Rock Valley so long. He's practically turned into a Chinese Taoist priest. While An Liang was spouting nonsense, 5 small vans approached from different directions along Caesar Avenue and Albo Avenue. The rear compartments of the vans had no windows at all, completely sealed with metal sheets. The vans quietly parked in spots surrounding the entrance to Whizbank, but An Liang, caught up in his own excitement, remained completely unaware. Von Friedrich and Tommy were watching the bank withdrawal data together. The outflow of funds was accelerating rapidly. Clearly not the effect Rentaro had predicted. Tommy dialed Rentaro again. At that moment, Rentaro was in a roadside motel near a Maryland highway, staring tensely at his computer screen just like Tommy. Rentaro kept muttering. Impossible, he told Tommy. The Kunitokatachi Shinto school's Feng Shui techniques have stood the test of 1,000 years. It's impossible for them to produce the exact opposite effect. Something must be wrong on site. Snow, pull up the headquarters surveillance feed. Snow opened another computer and brought up the security camera footage from outside the bank. He saw crowds packed tightly together, no longer the single file line they'd originally arranged. But according to Feng Shui theory, the difference between 1 row and 2 wasn't significant enough to cause such an extreme effect. And if this direction was auspicious, more rows should have actually slowed down withdrawals, not sped them up. Tommy said to Rentaro, We've already redirected the queue toward the north. Right now nothing unusual stands out here. Could it be Drake Church's Feng Shui that's been affected? The police are still investigating that bomb scare near the Iron Bridge. As Rentaro rapidly pulled up camera feeds from every angle and scrutinized them, he analyzed aloud with Tommy. Of course it's related to blocked qi flow from the upstream direction, but the downstream side to the right of Drake Church is secured by the bridge and the small island, a very conservative and stable layout. Even if the cathedral's Feng Shui doesn't generate wealth, it certainly shouldn't cause massive financial outflow. Parliament has observed over the past decade that local development aligns perfectly with this Feng Shui setup. It wouldn't be easily broken unless An Liang blew up the bridge on the right or dredged away the island in the middle of the river. Wait, why is the queue forming a pattern? Snow, pull up the satellite image and zoom in on the line. On the screen before Tommy and Rentaro suddenly appeared a massive Tianchi talisman. Its shape was fixed in place by barricades, while police officers stood nearby maintaining order. The crowd flowed forward like water along a winding, mysterious path. Though their movement wasn't particularly fast from above, the formation radiated an intense, chilling aura. Rentaro immediately turned to Tommy and said, An Liang has rearranged the queue. What was once a straight single-file line is now a double-file, zigzagging formation, carefully designed to form a Taoist talisman from China. This can completely dismantle the headquarters Feng Shui. Tommy slowly exhaled. Hearing Rentaro's explanation actually reassured him. If they understood the problem, there had to be a solution. He asked hopefully, Is there still a way to counter it? At this rate, Whizbank won't last much longer outside. Heavy snow blanketed northern America, yet Rentaro was so tense sweat beaded on his forehead. Snow stood up and handed him a tissue. After wiping his brow, Rentaro paused, then said with police already managing the crowd, trying to alter the formation now would draw attention and cause chaos. If An Liang is attacking with a talisman, we can fight back with one too, and don't forget we still have our ultimate weapon. But most importantly, we need to find An Liang. He couldn't have reconfigured the queue this quickly unless he's nearby headquarters. Rentaro's words confirmed Tommy's suspicion. Without hesitation, Rentaro called Angel headquarters to deploy a countermeasure. Meanwhile, Tommy scrolled through security footage, scanning the crowds outside the bank for that lean, sharply featured East Asian face. And long basked smugly in the early spring warmth. Once the sun reached its zenith, a quarter of Whizbank's capital would be withdrawn, and then Daniel could launch his stock market assault from New York, turning Whizbank's shares into worthless paper within 3 hours. With the Apostle Society destroyed, Li Xiaoxun wouldn't have to return as an angel, she could come to him instead as his fairy. The thought made An Long feel the sun's heat growing stronger. A salty sea breeze drifted in. Peeking through his sunglasses, he glanced down at his bare feet, comfortably buried in fine sand. Above him, a large watermelon-patterned beach umbrella cast a red glow over his bronzed skin, a wild primal hue that stirred his desire. He turned to the table beside him, where a cold drink and a plate of glistening green grapes sat. An Liang chuckled to himself, grapes? That little fairy really is wicked. This is practically an invitation, Alexander. Li Shaoxin's voice, soft enough to melt bones, caught his attention. He looked toward the ocean. Wave after wave rolled onto the shore as Li Shaoxin, clad in a bikini and holding a colorful life ring, ran toward him. She moved quickly, yet the scene unfolded in slow motion. Her champagne gold hair shimmered blindingly in the sunlight, and her body swayed rhythmically beneath the bikini, more turbulent than the sea itself. And Liang felt dizzy with longing. Overwhelmed by this surging tide of affection, he pushed himself up from the lounge chair, flung aside the brightly colored magazine, and opened his arms wide as he ran toward the sea. Shaoxin, Xiao Yu shook in Liang's arm urgently. Look. Something's happened. Something's happened. What happened to Shaoxin? And Lang shot upright in his chair. Outside Wisbank, clusters of people had gathered around the queue, one group carrying out an elderly man. Xiao Yu tugged at his sleeve, panicked. Could that talisman pattern affect people's health? Several elderly folks have fainted. That shouldn't be possible. The talisman was designed solely to disrupt the Feng Shui layout, not harm people. Stay put, I'll go check. And Lang immediately rushed into the withdrawal line. As soon as he squeezed into the crowd, dizziness hit him like a wave, and a dull ache throbbed in his skull. The elderly man on the ground was unconscious. Bystanders and cuers hurriedly carried him away from the line and laid him flat. Those with first aid knowledge unbuttoned his collar, checked his pulse and fanned him. And Liang scanned the surroundings. Everyone in line frowned in discomfort. Some women covered their mouths, looking nauseous. The entire queue seemed infected by a sudden malaise, swaying unsteadily. He pulled out his phone, no signal at all. Others had already left the line to cross the street and make calls. And Liang clutched his head and stumbled across the road. The moment he reached the other side, the headache eased. He realized instantly, this wasn't the talisman's doing. If the Apostles' Society was behind this, there was only one explanation. The crowd was under a brainwave attack. He stepped backward while quickly scanning every corner of the street. After a moment, he saw nothing unusual and ran back to Xiao Yu, saying, the Apostles' Society is using a brainwave machine to attack the crowd. If this keeps up, people will feel increasingly unwell. Those with severe headaches or vomiting will go home to rest, and the bank run will collapse immediately. I didn't expect they'd target ordinary people like this. It's despicable. Xiao Yu asked worriedly, what do we do now? We have to find where the brainwave machine is and figure out how to keep the line intact. No matter what, we can't let the queue break up. This is the main branch. If the line here disperses, it'll unravel the runs at every other branch too. Let's look around carefully for anything odd, strange people, anything unusual in the buildings nearby. Xiao Yu hurriedly packed up his laptop, slung it onto his back, and joined in Lang at the street corner, both cautiously searching for anything out of place. Tommy sat in front of his computer, eyes fixed on the unfolding situation. As soon as the van carrying the brainwave attack device arrived in front of Wisbank, it took immediate effect. People in line began feeling unwell, and some started leaving. The brainwave machine was capable of inciting riots or even full-scale unrest, but Rentaro had instructed the technicians to use only low-intensity settings, just enough to induce nausea and discomfort, nothing more. In reality, elderly people with weaker constitutions were the first to collapse, and women with lower willpower showed clear signs of violent vomiting. Most healthy young men merely felt slightly uneasy, but standing on the street for an hour with persistent headaches would inevitably dampen their mood and drain their motivation to withdraw money. Once only a handful of exceptionally resilient customers remained, forming a loose line. Bank staff could quietly remove the barriers arranged in the shape of a Tianqi talisman, thereby neutralizing the bank run without drawing attention. Tommy knew that as soon as Rentaro made his move, An Liang would respond. The person acting overly tense or behaving strangely was most likely An Liang himself. After an elderly man fainted, a ripple of commotion spread through the crowd, irritating Tommy. In such chaos, everyone acted abnormally. How could he possibly spot An Liang? Moreover, he'd seen yesterday's newspaper headline photo. The New York tourist named Alexander N. had a small mustache above his lip. That meant An Liang disguised himself differently every day. Right now, in front of these cameras, An Liang could be anyone. At that moment, a stout black man caught Tommy's attention. The man had a large belly, puffy cheeks, and a ring of facial hair around his lips. He first dashed across the street into the withdrawal line, then suddenly bolted out again, looking around anxiously. Black people weren't common in Germany, and black police officers were even rarer. But if he was just a tourist, why did he seem so nervous? What was he searching for? Suspicious. Tommy zoomed the camera lens tightly onto the man's face. A long-haired young man who looked like a Japanese exchange student approached the black man, and the two exchanged a few whispered words. Tommy immediately enlarged the footage to read their lip movements. They weren't speaking German or English. He turned to von Friedrich and said, "Come take a look." Could they be speaking Japanese? Because of his family background, von Friedrich had interacted with Japanese right-wing figures since childhood and spoke fluent Japanese. After watching the replay twice, he stated confidently, "That's not how Japanese lip movements look when speaking, and facial expressions when speaking Japanese are subtler than theirs. They're Chinese. Send someone to act now." An Lang and Xiao Yu stood anxiously at the intersection, scanning all around. Aside from the larger-than-usual crowd and a few police officers nearby, nothing seemed amiss. Suddenly, Xiao Yu leaned close to An Lang's ear and whispered, "Do you see that small van to our right? The silver-gray one parked in the roadside spot." "Yeah, what about it?" Now check the 2 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 8 o'clock directions. There are 5 identical vans like they weren't here before and just appeared. And Lang glanced around and realized, right, how can they all be exactly the same? Even if they belonged to the same company, they'd parked together. Ah, I get it. The brainwave machines are inside those vans. Look, the 5 vans align perfectly with the key points of the talisman formation created by the Q, and the distances between them are equal. They've formed a pentagram surrounding the talisman's core. That's the 5-star evil sealing talisman from Japanese on Myodo. We can't let this continue. We have to drive those vans away. Xiao Yu immediately said. I'll call the police and report a bomb threat. They'll search the vans right away. With all that high-tech equipment on board, they definitely won't want police boarding their vehicles. They'll flee immediately. And Lang grabbed his arm and stopped him. No, if we report a terrorist threat, the police will disperse the crowd and shut down the roads. The bank run will still collapse. What do we do? Stay calm. Let me think. Just then, 2 German schoolgirls strolled along the sidewalk from the side street, chatting and laughing as they crossed the road toward Anliang. While glancing back at the commotion in front of Wisbank, as if discussing what was happening, they accidentally bumped straight into him. Instinctively, Anliang raised his arms to shield his chest and felt one girl's hand thrust sharply toward his abdomen. He dropped his elbow to pin her arm down. From the corner of his eye, he saw her angelic smile flash with cold-blooded intent. At the same time, a needle-like chill pierced his stomach. One thought shot through his mind, poisoned needle. And Liang clutched his abdomen and collapsed to the ground. The 2 girls vanished instantly into the crowd. Xiao Yu, stunned by the sudden attack, couldn't waken Liang no matter how hard he tried, with so much still at stake. His hands trembled as he fumbled for his phone to call an ambulance. An ambulance soon arrived on Caesar Avenue, but it wasn't the one Xiao Yu had called. It was dispatched earlier by a concerned citizen after the elderly man fainted. Now that the medical team stepped out, they found no unconscious elder on the ground. The man had recovered quickly after leaving the line and gone home. Instead, the medics gathered around Liang, lifting his eyelids and checking his blood pressure, only to end up with black grease all over their hands, thoroughly puzzled. After failed on-site resuscitation, Liang was loaded onto a stretcher and into the ambulance. Xiao Yu abandoned everything at the bank entrance, frantically calling several mercenary teams to hold their positions before leaping into the ambulance himself. As the ambulance pulled away, Liang lay motionless with his eyes tightly shut. No one could tell his condition. His face was smeared with thick black grease paint. A nurse gently wiped his face clean with a cloth, repeatedly asking Xiao Yu why he'd painted his face so dark. The ambulance sped through the streets, crashing recklessly for 3 minutes before screeching to a halt in front of the hospital. And Liang was still lying rigidly on the stretcher, until suddenly, he pulled out his phone from his pocket and said, Team 1, hold your position. Team 2, secure the railing setup. Team 3, check your gear and get ready to move. Then switching to Chinese, he told Xiao Yu, run out onto the street and call the police. Tell them someone's using infrared remote technology to hijack Wisbank's main computer system to commit electronic financial crime. There's a silver van right outside the head office. That's where the transmitter is. Tell the cops to arrest whoever's inside immediately. And remember, tell them there's only one van. After you make the call, wait for me right there. Doctors and nurses stared at him in utter confusion as Liang climbed off the stretcher himself and dashed into the hospital. A few moments later, a tall, handsome Chinese young man ran out of the hospital. And Liang had already washed off the grease paint from his face and tossed away the pillow he'd stuffed under his shirt to fake a potbelly. He settled the ambulance bill with the hospital staff and then leaped onto a sanitation department water truck that had just pulled up but hadn't even come to a full stop yet. Xiao Yu, spotting Liang, scrambled aboard too. The truck roared away from the hospital, heading straight for Drake Church on the south bank. Liang turned to Xiao Yu and said, now we're finally safe. Dead men don't get hunted. We can do anything now. Got any food? I always get hungry when I'm nervous. Xiao Yu asked. What just happened back there? Was that female student a killer? Those are the heartless angels. Luckily, the pillow in my belly blocked her poisoned needle. Otherwise, I'd have dropped dead of a heart attack 5 seconds later, and no one would have found a trace of the cause. Xiao Yu caught on fast. Potassium cyanide, right? Just a tiny scratch and you die of cardiac arrest. Something like that, yeah. But all the needles hit the pillow. Poor pillow, may God rest its soul. Mr. N, I've already called the police. But I don't quite get it. Why did you tell me to say there was only one silver van? And Liang nodded politely at the driver, took a cigarette from him, lit it, and exhaled a long plume of smoke before replying. If I'd said 5 vans, the police would have sent a huge squad. The crowd would have panicked and scattered the moment they saw them. But if I say there's just one van, they'll send a couple of tech guys to check it out quietly. When they show up and see 5 vans instead, they'll inspect every single one. Trust me, they'll all bolt. The gear inside is way too high-tech to survive a proper inspection. And once they run, the cops will chase them. Hehehehe. And Liang let out a Donald Duck-like cackle of triumph, then immediately choked on his own smoke, coughing violently. Just then his phone rang. The surveillance team reported that police searching for homemade bombs upstream of the Iron Bridge were gradually pulling out. Riverside Avenue was now clear for vehicles. Liang snapped his phone shut and told Xiao Yu, I knew they'd pull that move, so I've already set up my next one. Hehe. Call Dada and tell him to start working right away. Frankfurt police proved surprisingly efficient. Within 10 minutes of Liang being loaded into the ambulance, a black electronic forensics van arrived carrying 2 plainclothes cyber officers bundled in wool coats. Back at the station, they'd reviewed the surveillance footage from the reported scene and discovered not one but 5 silver vans. Though all were legally parked along the curb, their positions formed a perfect ring around the entrance to Wisbank's headquarters. That looked highly suspicious. The electronic forensics van didn't act immediately. Instead, it raised a small signal interception radar from its roof, a move that instantly alerted the Apostles' Society. Indeed, those 5 vans were packed with brainwave interference transmitters designed to manipulate crowds. Inside each vehicle, several technicians clad head to toe in radiation suits were operating low-frequency emitters aimed directly at the crowd, slowly eroding their collective psychological resistance. When they radioed Tommy to report possible police electronic scanning at the scene, Tommy realized Liang had somehow mobilized law enforcement against them again. But he'd just watched with his own eyes as Liang collapsed and was carted off in an ambulance. How could he possibly have tipped off the police? There was no time to unravel this mystery. Brainwave tech was the Apostles' Society's secret weapon. Under no circumstances could the vans or equipment fall into police hands. Preserving that secrecy mattered far more than any losses from the bank run. Money could be lost, banks could collapse, but they could always rebuild. If this technology leaked, however, and authorities uncovered the Society's motives and very existence, there'd be no coming back. All 5 vans began pulling away one after another. The electronic officers in the forensics van noticed the low-frequency radiation they'd just detected suddenly vanish, and their previously dead phones abruptly regained signal. They immediately radioed headquarters about these anomalies, then quietly tailed the last van as it drove off. But the moment the first van left, a high-powered civilian motorcycle had already slipped into pursuit from a distance. After narrowly escaping the angel assassin, Li Xiaoxin understood one thing clearly. Unless the Apostles' Society was rooted out entirely, trying to free even 1 or 2 angels through brain surgery was pure fantasy. She wouldn't seek help from anyone outside the Society, not Liang, not the police. Doing so would only trap her in another uncontrollable situation. As the most senior angel and the one who knew the Society best, Li Xiaoxin had pieced together her past missions, tracing every operation back to its ultimate beneficiary. Every single thread pointed to the same institution. Wisbank, Tong, Feng and Jin, the 3 fellow Asian angels who defected with her, were all dead now. With her current strength, Li Xiaoxin couldn't launch any real plan. All she could do was scour every scrap of information about Wisbank daily, gathering intelligence and waiting for her chance. When rumors of Wisbank's insolvency began flooding the internet, she recognized it as a rare opportunity. In the cutthroat world of banking, there's no such thing as baseless rumor. Every damaging whisper usually hides truth and scandal, deliberate leaks by rivals. That meant someone powerful was about to challenge the Apostles' Society, and if that challenger was strong enough, the Society would be forced to unleash everything it had in response. Everything unfolded exactly as Li Xiaoxin, who knew the Apostles' methods inside out, had predicted. Now, wearing a signal-blocking helmet and disguised as a motorcyclist, she lay hidden at the far end of Caesar Avenue. Finally, she spotted the familiar brainwave interference van. Since the Apostles' Society's headquarters was in Frankfurt, any brainwave van operating here would eventually return to their tech base, and that base was Li Xiaoxin's ultimate target. She rode her motorcycle, trailing the first departing van from a distance all the way to the northern outskirts of Frankfurt, under Tommy's command. The other vans split off at various junctions to shake off electronic police surveillance. The first van, now free from tracking, returned to the massive old warehouse. Li Xiaoxin sped past the warehouse gate on her motorcycle, watching through her rearview mirror as the van slowly rolled inside. She knew this had to be the technological headquarters controlling the angels. The chip implanted in her brain began pulsing with unstable, intensifying currents, sending sharp jolts of pain through her nerves. The self-destruct command had already been activated. The moment she removed her helmet, her brain would explode. Li Xiaoxin rode a short distance ahead, then doubled back to reconnoiter the area again. Any location belonging to the Apostles' Society would be heavily guarded. Charging in directly on her motorcycle would be suicide. She needed not only a way in but also a clear escape route. This time she noticed a drainage ditch running parallel to the road between the warehouse and the highway. 2 concrete sewage pipes, each about a meter in diameter, extended from the warehouse, discharging a modest flow of wastewater. She looked ahead and saw another silver van approaching slowly from the distance. Li Xiaoxin realized all 5 vans would eventually return here. She quickly hid her motorcycle in the woods beside the road and took cover in the bushes near a crossroad in front of the warehouse. The third van bypassed the intersection where Li Xiaoxin was hiding, returning to the warehouse from another direction. If this continued, she'd lose her last chance to infiltrate. The 5th van would surely be under tight electronic police surveillance. Crouched anxiously in the grass, Li Xiaoxin watched vehicles speed past. Soon, the traffic light at the crossroad turned red. The 4th van heading back to the warehouse stopped right in front of her. Behind it loomed a large container truck. The driver's seat was high enough to see far ahead, but drivers of such trucks rarely paid attention to what was directly beneath their cabs. Right now, the driver's eyes would be fixed on the traffic light, ready to accelerate the moment it turned green. It was a rare opportunity. As the red light began flashing, seconds away from turning green, Li Xiaoxin suddenly rolled out from the bushes toward the rear of the van, then executed a swift sideways roll underneath the chassis. When the van entered the warehouse, Li Xiaoxin was clinging to its undercarriage. Peering out from beneath the vehicle, she saw the warehouse interior looked perfectly ordinary, piles of cargo, loaders, and dispatchers bustling about. The van drove onto a weighbridge as part of standard procedure, but instead of staying level, the platform began rising slowly like an elevator. Li Xiaoshen's heart raced. Equipment on the upper floors likely handled signal transmission, and if she was lucky, this might even be the Apostles' Global Operations Center. The van ascended to the third floor and parked in a designated spot. Several technicians in radiation suits jumped out and headed toward another elevator, while a group of mechanics gathered to inspect the cargo hold. Li Xiaoshen remained motionless under the chassis until she heard the lead technician swipe a magnetic card to unlock the elevator. At the sharp beep of the electronic lock, she burst out from under the van like an arrow, lunging for the elevator entrance. She clamped one hand on the technician's head and jammed her gun upward through the chin into his radiation helmet. Without looking back, she kicked the other technicians out of the elevator just as the doors slammed shut. When the doors opened again, they were on the fourth floor, but security guards were already waiting in full readiness. The moment they spotted the figure in a motorcycle leather jacket, they opened fire without hesitation, bullets tearing through the air. The intruder collapsed in a bloody heap on the elevator floor. For 1 second, silence reigned. Then, from the ceiling of the elevator, a stripped-down XM-BA rifle, its casing and stock removed, swung down and unleashed a barrage of return fire at the guards taking cover on both sides. A black-clad figure dropped from the top of the elevator, a woman wearing a black shielding helmet, armed to the teeth, her form hugging black leather outfit accentuating the slender, sensual silhouette of an Eastern woman. No one saw her face, no one could track her movements. While the guards fumbled to reload, pinned down by her suppressive fire, she sprang like a leopard onto the top of a massive instrument cabinet. The fourth floor was a mezzanine within the warehouse, windowless, yet the thickness of the walls was palpable. Rows of equipment cabinets stood densely packed like shipping containers. From her elevated position, Li Xiaoshen swept the room with gunfire, forcing everyone to hit the floor. Among the dozens sprawled, there were technicians in radiation suits and fully armored black-clad guards with steel helmets and face shields. Li Xiaoshen scanned deeper into the server room and spotted a narrow doorway, just wide enough for 2 people to pass side by side. Beside it, several guards were escorting a technician backward through the door. She sprinted across the tops of the cabinets, firing bursts at the narrow doorway to prevent their escape. That technician was clearly the lead engineer. He wouldn't be getting special protection and a clear exit otherwise. Vaulting over cabinet after cabinet, she heard concentrated gunfire erupt behind her. She couldn't stop to return fire. She had to gamble that none of the guards were sharpshooters skilled enough to hit moving targets like she was. The server room was vast, nearly 100 meters from the elevator to that newly opened doorway. Pushing herself to the limit, Li Xiaoshen hurled a smoke grenade during a reload, triggering the fire alarm and activating the sprinkler system. Torrents of water poured down, plunging the room into emergency mode. The lights dimmed, replaced by the harsh, strobing glare of alarm beacons. By the time she reached the narrow doorway, several guards had already taken positions blocking it. But Li Xiaoshen was unfazed after all. She was the Apostle Society's finest angel. A row of equipment cabinets stood before her, with a cross aisle in the middle. She let herself slide off the cabinet top, using momentum to glide forward and drop silently into the aisle. The moment the guards saw her land, they rushed in from both sides of the cabinets. But before they could pull their triggers, a deafening explosion hurled them aside. In that split-second visual gap, Li Xiaoshen had already tossed the grenade to the floor. She leapt onto the last row of cabinets and charged straight for the closing narrow door. The door sealed shut against her back. Ahead stretched a long corridor. All of this had unfolded in mere seconds. The guards and the fleeing engineer hadn't even realized someone had breached their inner sanctum. Li Xiaoshen fired precise shots from behind, dropping the guards instantly. The engineer, just turning to glance back, found himself seized by the chest and yanked backward. He trembled violently, shrieking in terror, his legs giving out beneath him. There was no time for interrogation or searching. Li Xiaoshen grabbed the engineer by the chest and dragged him toward the electrical panel up ahead. At the electric door, Li Xiaoshen pressed his gun against the engineer's head and demanded he open it. But the engineer couldn't get it to budge, not with his password, not with his magnetic card. He was nearly sobbing as he told Li Xiaoshen, "It's already an emergency lockdown. All electric doors are self-locked. This corridor is about to release nerve gas, and if anyone tries to go further in, it'll trigger a self-destruct sequence." Li Xiaoshen stared at the engineer's face. His lips were pale, his whole face drenched, impossible to tell whether it was sweat or tears, and his entire body trembled as if an earthquake were shaking the corridor itself. Li Xiaoshen released him, letting him collapse onto the floor, then crouched down and asked, "What's your name?" "Scott." "All right, Scott. Do you have kids?" Scott gasped in short, ragged breaths and nodded frantically, eyes wide with terror. Li Xiaoshen reached inside Scott's helmet and gently touched his face. "Scott, I'm an angel. You can call me Rain. But I'm not here to kill anyone. I just need to destroy the main server controlling the angels. I know you don't want to die. I came here for the same reason, to survive. If you don't help me, we're both going to die here, and our deaths won't mean a thing. Think about your child. Save yourself." Scott swallowed hard and nodded. Li Xiaoshen continued, "I've got plastic explosives. Do you know where to blow this door open?" Scott wasn't stupid. He immediately understood where his loyalties now lay. He stood up and pointed to several spots on the door and wall. "Blow these weak points. The pulse wave might cut power to the motherboard inside the door. Then, within 3 seconds, force it open through the gap. Once it's open, the gas won't be released." Li Xiaoshen immediately set the plastic explosives and told Scott, "Go lie down in the middle of the corridor. Pull one of the guards over you as cover. I'm detonating it now. The chaotic footage from the warehouse control room had already appeared on Tommy's computer screen. The sudden turn of events shocked both him and von Friedrich. They'd assumed it was just electronic police tracking them, if their angel intercepted the e-cops en route, and their brainwave interference van used a few tricks to shake off law enforcement, the matter would have been resolved, but what they were seeing now clearly wasn't police work. Von Friedrich murmured thoughtfully, "Is this the betrayal Rentaro Nagato warned us about?" through his earpiece. Tommy heard the urgent report from the warehouse security chief, only one intruder already contained in the buffer corridor. Tommy exhaled slowly, slumped forward with his elbows on the desk, rubbing his forehead in frustration. It has to be the angel who escaped from Asia Division. During the last purge we lost 6 angels, but one still got away. She's the most dangerous of them all. Von Friedrich glanced at the stock market trend projected on the wall. Prices were still plummeting rapidly. The bank's capital was vanishing like water down a drain. Yet his voice remained steady. "Don't lose focus. Zone P is under its supervisor's responsibility. Even if it comes to the worst, we can always activate the self-destruct protocol. But that's decades of research. All our funding went into it. I want to send out an angel to handle the situation there." Von Friedrich cut him off firmly. "No, absolutely not. That place isn't just our intelligence hub, it's also the core control center for the angels. Every angel knows the consequences of rebellion, but now a traitor has shown them an example. Better to destroy the central command than give ourselves more enemies." Tommy grew visibly agitated. He stood up and faced von Friedrich. "We can't control the bank run, and Liang vanished right under our noses. Now Zone P is under attack. How can we just sit here? I should have shot in Liang when I had the chance. Every day he lives brings us closer to death. I need to go to Zone P and take direct control. We still have a final line of defense for the bank, but if Zone P is destroyed, it'll take years to rebuild, and it could trigger mass defections among the angels." Von Friedrich smiled, but there was a faint sorrow beneath it. He gently pushed Tommy back into his chair. "My boy, great endeavors are never smooth sailing. In fact, they're nothing but a constant process of solving problems. You'll face far greater challenges ahead. That's your destiny sealed the moment you were born into the Friedrich family. You're still young. Dying recklessly would be nothing but running from that fate. The Apostle Society has endured 70 years since the war. Even when we had nothing, we rose again from the ruins, not through blind courage, but because we stayed alive and held firm to our belief in building a new world order. Don't fixate on temporary setbacks. But while you sit here, you must still give everything you have. Trust that the Zone P supervisor will handle it properly, otherwise, why would we have entrusted him with the duty? And remember this, no angel will live long enough to threaten your life. Just stay hidden for a while and they'll fade away on their own." Seeing Tommy calm slightly, von Friedrich asked, "So what decision will you make now?" Tommy frowned, lowered his head, and thought for a moment. "Evacuate all movable equipment from Zone P. If it's compromised, trigger the self-destruct, and I think we should evacuate Father and the other members from Drake Church first." Tommy finished, glancing anxiously at von Friedrich, as if seeking approval. Von Friedrich chuckled softly, so gently that even his white mustache twitched. He said to Tommy, "Rentaro Nagato told us this cathedral is the Feng Shui heart of the Apostle Society. It must be guarded by a pure blood heir of the Friedrich line. I won't leave until the very end, but don't worry too much, things won't get that bad. Besides, we have 3 escape routes: land, sea, and air. However, you've overlooked one crucial point. The angels haven't confirmed An Liang's death. Have you considered, if he's still alive, where would he go?" Tommy froze, then blurted out in alarm, "He'd come here." It was just past midnight in New York, snow falling lightly from the sky. An Liang's Feng Shui office was lit brightly through the night. Pizza boxes and soda cans were scattered everywhere. Daniel hadn't slept all night. He paced restlessly through his office filled with computers, headset on, constantly issuing orders. His comms channel was linked directly to every bank and hedge fund tied to the United Americas Investment Corporation. Massive amounts of capital were flooding into the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. A full-scale financial ambush was about to begin. Because of the time difference between international markets, Wall Street opened 5 hours later than Frankfurt, according to his original plan. He would use media and online channels on Sunday to incite a bank run, causing panic selling of Swiss bank shares when the market opened on Monday. He'd then launch a covert short attack only after Wall Street opened, so as not to expose his capital too early in the market. But An Liang's instructions couldn't be ignored. There was no such thing as absolute advantage in the market, even with massive funds at his disposal. He had to ensure flawless execution and maintain relentless pressure on the opponent's morale. An Liang had just called demanding an earlier assault, not only because noon was the weakest hour for Swiss bank's fortune, but also because the Apostle Society was mounting a surprisingly resilient counterattack. Right now, Daniel was waiting only for An Liang's signal to unleash a massive short sale. He glanced at the stock price on his screen. It had already dropped to 36 euros. The pace satisfied him, though he could see steady, small-scale buying attempts trying to prop up the price. Each minor rebound, however, was swiftly crushed by even heavier selling pressure. An Liang's real problem wasn't whether he could execute the short, it was that the angels were trying to kill him. Yet today he absolutely had to walk the streets, which made him extremely vulnerable. The sooner he crushed the Apostles' Society, the sooner he could wrap things up and return to New York. He tilted his head, looking toward the rear of Drake Church. A Y-shaped 3-way intersection lay there, flanked by residential houses and bare trees. After a long winter, the trees had shed all their leaves, and many thick branches had already died off. A strong gust could snap them loose, sending them crashing onto the street. 3 tree maintenance trucks from the parks department lined the curb, their hydraulic booms raised high. Workers stood on the platforms, some above, wielding chainsaws to cut dead limbs, others below, managing traffic safety. The constant buzz of chainsaws filled the air, giving the street a bustling, chaotic energy. And Lang held a coffee and a hot dog in his hands, and let out a Donald Duck-like cackle. Quack, quack, quack. There is real joy in destruction. Rentaro won't have a clue what I'm up to this time. Let's see how he cracks this one. Quack, quack, quack. Feeling triumphant, he picked up his phone and dialed Daniel. Yo ho, I'm all set here. In half an hour you can go full Soros and start dumping WizBank stock like crazy. Daniel's voice was hoarse. Days of sleepless nights and intense stress had even slimmed down his once bulging belly. He spoke wearily into the phone. My brother, this money isn't easy to earn. I haven't slept in days. Thankfully the opening phase went smoothly. We should be mopping up the battlefield by tonight. He leaned back on the sofa rubbing his temples. But there is still one last problem. WizBank's White Knight is a hardliner. No matter how much we threaten them, they won't budge. I'm worried they'll end up becoming our final opponent. Read Dust's note. When a company feels unable to fend off a hostile takeover, it may invite a friendly third party, a White Knight, to make a higher counteroffer. This tactic not only drives up the acquisition price through competition, but may also include lockup options granting the White Knight preferential terms to buy assets or shares. Don't worry, Data. The Feng Shui layout I'm about to deploy is called Lion Gen Breaks the Thief. It's designed to stab villains in the back when they least expect it. Call Senjima Bank again in 15 minutes. I guarantee their attitude will change. Senjima is WizBank's last trump card. If we don't neutralize them today, none of us are going home. Daniel grabbed a towel from the sofa and wiped his grimy face, sighing weakly. Do you really think it'll work? I've talked to them over 10 times, offered to swap their toxic assets, even threatened to hack their mainframe, and they still say the offer can't be changed. I see right through these Japanese. They want to swallow WizBank whole. We're just clearing the path for Senjima Bank. In the end, they'll be the ones triggering the priority acquisition clause. Otherwise, we'll end up spending a fortune buying WizBank at an inflated price. I don't see any turning point in the next 15 minutes. Once the stock drops below 10 euros, Senjima can take over WizBank's 50 savings branches worldwide. That's the crown jewel of the entire bank. Without acquiring those, this whole fight is pointless. I'm already preparing to negotiate with Senjima to buy back the branches. My contract with United Americas ties my payout inversely to the capital I spend. If I save them money, my cut grows massively. And Lang glanced at his watch and said, I don't care how much of their money you spend. It's not yours anyway. Listen, Dada. When you were broke, $500 a month meant starvation, but 1,000 meant survival. That extra 500 felt like life itself. Now that you're rich, though, 5 million or 10 million, it's all the same. You get whatever you want anyway. So spend United America's cash, make your job easier, and accept slightly less profit. Daniel roared into the phone. I want 5 million, I want 10 million, hell, I want 15 million, and if I earn 1 cent less, I sure as hell won't share it with you. Then he heard Lang's unrestrained laughter, slammed the phone shut, and muttered to himself. Only a poor fool who's never seen real money talks like 5 million matters. After this deal, I'll have 50 million. I'll buy a mansion in Long Island, marry a blonde model, and hire models as maids too. After hanging up, Lang turned to Xiao Yu and said, Do something for Dada, he seems a bit down. Then he dialed another number and spoke briefly. Xiao Yu watched as the 3 tree maintenance trucks behind Drake Church extended their booms skyward. Fully raised, each boom reached the height of the cathedral's roof. Slowly, the 3 arms converged, forming a single triangular spike towering directly behind the church. So this is what you've been working on these past few days? And Lang chewed his hot dog and grinned. Exactly. Now the Parks Department, the Sanitation Bureau, and the police are all helping us crush the Nazis. Meanwhile, people around the world are lining up to withdraw money from the Apostles' Society. Tell me, where can they possibly run? Xiao Yu asked. Don't they have the White Robe Knights? Dada still hasn't convinced San Island Bank to sell the tender offer. So what? It's not our money being spent. We'll strike a deal with San Island Bank sooner or later anyway. But honestly, I don't think Dada even needs to negotiate anymore. San Island Bank is going to betray the Apostles' Society. Xiao Yu spread his palm and began calculating with his fingers, then laid out this year's Flying Stars chart. No wonder you called this layout Lianzhen Breaks the Thief. You've arranged 3 crane booms into a sword shape to activate Lianzhen, the malefic star that flies south this year. The south is the position of the cathedral's backing support. If you stab a sword right there, you can shatter their network of connections, right? And Liang took a big bite of his delicious Frankfurt sausage and said contentedly, You're half right. I taught you everything you know about Feng Shui. Yunji always complains that I only focus on urban Feng Shui and ignore natural landscapes. That's why your practice has become even more urbanized than mine, and that's a shaky foundation. But I only ever got to learn from you in downtown New York. I never had the chance to go up mountains or down rivers. And whenever you went out, you always took May with you and left me stuck at the office. Of course you'd love for me to leave May at the office so you two could fool around. I've known for ages how long you've been lusting after her. Xiao Yu protested innocently. We were just talking about Feng Shui. Why bring me into this? Ah. Right, Feng Shui. And Liang drew a triangle on the windshield with his finger. In Flying Star theory, Lian-Zhen is just a symbolic concept, but in form school Feng Shui, it's a physical entity. A triangular mountain behind a dragon site is also called Lian-Zhen. Normally, Lian-Zhen is a malefic star. If it appears directly on the backing mountain without proper elemental transformation, it severs all human connections. Relatives, friends, clients, shareholders, and supporters will all abandon the occupant of the site. If the cathedral were a tomb, it would mean no descendants. The Apostles' Cathedral sits on flat plains with no immediate backing mountain, yet it draws powerful dragon chi directly from the Alps, hundreds of kilometers away. That's why their fortune has stayed so stable. But to destabilize them, I gave them a Lian-Zhen backing mountain of my own. Can those 3 crane booms really count as a backing mountain? They look flimsy and wobbly, and Lang said, just erecting 3 static iron poles here would take at least 6 months to accumulate any real Feng Shui power. But this year is different. According to the annual chi chart, the malefic Lian-Zhen star flies into the south, the exact position behind the cathedral. By shaping the cranes into a true Lian-Zhen form, I've activated its Sha energy. Most importantly, he grinned. Those 3 tree-clearing trucks won't shut off their engines until the stock market closes. Their engines keep vibrating, so this iron frame Lian-Zhen mountain vibrates constantly. That's what makes the Sha energy erupt immediately, severing all external support for the Apostle Society. Their backers will abandon them fast. Xiao Yu nodded. It's currently the left assistant 8 white star period, and Lu Kun, the thief star, has been stationed in the south. Since that star belongs to wood element, and those cranes have chainsaws mounted on top. The raised chainsaws are precisely countering the wood element thief star, right? Exactly. Fight poison with poison. Use villains to defeat villains. It's the easiest way. Hence, Lian-Zhen breaks the thief. An Liang glanced toward the 3 tree-clearing trucks in the distance. The workers had already gotten out and were lounging by the roadside, some smoking, some playing cards, others napping in the cabs. All they had to do was park the trucks there for half a day, and each would earn a full month's salary. Meanwhile, Tommy had stationed angels inside the cathedral and ordered secret sweeps of all surrounding roads. The angels were hunting for Lang to eliminate him and scanning for anything unusual near or inside the cathedral. In Tommy's mind, nothing was coincidental anymore. Every ordinary object could unleash terrifying Feng Shui power. To him, Lang was as fearsome as a sorcerer. The stock price kept sliding faster and faster thanks to the massive human-formed Tianxi talisman perfectly maintained in front of Swiss Bank. By noon, the crowd lining up to withdraw money had grown even larger. The police were more than willing to cooperate with the so-called crowd flow management experts, whose professional analysis convinced them that arranging thousands of people into a fortune-to-misfortune talisman formation would shorten the queue, concentrate the crowd, and prevent riots or stampedes. Every member of the Apostles' Society Council was frantically borrowing from familiar banking institutions, but fewer lenders were willing to help, and the amounts offered kept shrinking. Soon, they couldn't find anyone to lend to them at all. At that point, the white-robed knights became their last resort. San Island Bank, backed by Japanese right-wing forces, still stood ready to support Swiss Bank under the white-robed knight banner. Tommy stayed in constant contact with Rentaro. Unable to alter the Feng Shui in front of Swiss Bank's headquarters, Rentaro couldn't pinpoint where the problem lay. In his view, although failing to destroy the Iron Bridge was a major setback, as long as the cathedral's Feng Shui remained intact and the roads in front weren't blocked by police, the Apostles' Society shouldn't have suffered such catastrophic capital flight even if they couldn't raise funds to preemptively acquire assets. He kept asking Tommy if there were any strange signs around the cathedral, but Tommy saw nothing unusual. Even the angels' repeated reports confirmed everything appeared normal. No one suspected that 3 ordinary Parks Department utility trucks had secretly deployed a Feng Shui Sha formation designed to sever the Apostles' Society's network of influence. In the northern outskirts of Frankfurt, muffled explosions echoed from the Apostles' Society's tech center, a facility disguised as a large warehouse. Located far from the highway where only speeding cars passed by, the blasts drew no outside attention. But inside, smoke billowed from the 4th floor of the main warehouse, and alarms blared incessantly. When the blast doors of the buffer corridor blew open, Li Xiaoxian seized the smoky chaos to hurl a grenade into the vast central control room. She yanked Engineer Scott through the doorway and rolled aside just as the grenade detonated. Instantly, gunfire erupted from the control room, bullets pouring into the buffer corridor. Li Xiaoxian returned fire, but she aimed precisely at every muzzle flash, knowing each burst came from a guard. After 30 seconds of relentless crossfire, only Li Xiaoxian rose from the blood-soaked floor, clutching her chest. Dragging Scott through the smoke, she demanded in a near-hysterical voice, "Where's the master console controlling the Angel's brain chips? I need to disable the chip detonation system. I want it gone forever." Scott looked around. Equipment lay shattered, bullet holes riddled the walls, and corpses littered the ground. He stared at Li Xiaoxian's helmet and stammered, "You've triggered the chip's self-destruct, haven't you?" Li Xiaoxian clutched her chest, her expression pained as she stepped closer to Scott. "Yes. The moment I take off this helmet, my brain will explode. Have you ever seen a neural chip detonate? It can blow your head apart and then shatter the entire truck cab. If the chip in my brain explodes right now, half of your head will be gone too." After enduring a barrage of explosions and gunfire, Scott had started to get used to the chaos. He looked at Li Xiaoxian and nodded nervously. "I understand, but this facility only handles the development of extended functions for the mind control chips and monitors and coordinates the Angel's operations. We don't have the authority to terminate an Angel at will, so the detonation code isn't held by the control center." "Then the Apostles' Society leadership holds the detonation code?" Scott nodded. Li Xiaoxian said coldly, Then I'll blow this whole place up. No more trouble after that. No. Scott quickly stopped her. We'll both die if you do that. Wait, let me find a working computer and try something. Do you know how to crack the code? Scott scrambled around looking for a functional computer, calling back over his shoulder. I know a little, but I'm not an expert. It's worth a shot though. Just then, Scott found a computer that powered on. He swiftly typed on the keyboard, accessing the chip control system and then navigating to the explosive deactivation switch. Suddenly, Li Shaoxin asked him, "Can these machines connect to the internet?" "Yes," Scott replied, still focused on the screen. "It's a local network, but connecting to international lines to gather intelligence is part of the center's job."